The Magnificent Kotobuki is set in a fantasy world where periodically portals open up in the sky to Japan, and the most notable of which allowed factories to be built, presumably during World War II era Japan, inside of the fantasy world itself. Japan has left the fantasy world, but they have left a lot of their old World War II era planes inside the world itself, which is now in a sort of post-apocalyptic state, at least in the region that this story takes place in that basically all of the water is dried up. The show itself doesn't really address how the world functions without any notable bodies of water nearby, and that is actually part of the major issues with the show, is that there is a sort of like lack of world building, and though all of the main characters do eventually get their own focused episodes, a lot of them do end up kind of feeling shallow. The story itself follows a group of girls, specifically the Kotobuki Squadron, who are sky mercenaries working aboard the airship Hagoromo, and throughout the course of the series, they come into conflict with sky pirates, evil corporations, and even an ace pilot autocrat who's bent on world domination / air portal control. The major focus of the show itself is the aerial dogfights, which I've heard described as porn for pilots, but I have to admit that especially in the early parts of the show, I wasn't particularly invested in the dogfights. I did not find them that interesting. This show also has a tendency to swap between 2D, 3D animations. A lot of the background characters are 2D. The main characters themselves are often 3D. And I know that sounded backward, and for once I'm not misspeaking. The main characters are 3D, and most of the background characters are 2D. It works well enough. Sometimes the animation can get a little awkward on the characters, but as I said, the major focus of this show is the dogfights, which, as I have discovered, I'm not particularly interested in. There's a lot of interesting lore tidbits with the air portals, and it very slowly drip feeds you its world building. Most of the characters end up feeling kind of underdeveloped, but the show does slowly progress and slowly does add more depth. So you find yourself more attached to the characters and more interested to the real slow burn mystery that the show itself presents. And I found myself getting more engaged as it went on. It was sort of a slow but steady climb, but I found that as I became more engaged, I became more interested in the aerial dogfights as well. By the end, I actually enjoyed the dogfighting and the characters and the setting, and I have to admit that the final battle had me on the edge of my seat, but for the majority of viewers, I imagine that it would be really hard to get over the early episode slump. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your Envoy of Hope. Bye-bye!